I have to tell you, the best thing about junior high for me was that no actual aptitude is required for success. You know, like everything's at such a low level that just a little bit of effort and time just puts you right over the success hump. So I was quite good at junior high. I was in all the honors classes, thank you. I only actually had aptitude for math and English. Science, none at all. But if you're good at math, they pretty much throw you in the science, because they just figure they go together. And when I was in junior high, it wasn't like nowadays. You know, nowadays kids in junior high, they can take all these advanced placement courses. You know, they're studying quantum mechanics and organic chemistry and astrophysics. Like before they even get into high school, they've got like 6 semesters of college under their belt. But in my day, they just had honors biology. So, you know, it was safe to say I could cut up a frog with the best of them, so I was good. And that's all there was to worry about until the end of 7th grade, when this letter came out to all the kids in honors biology explaining there would be a new science class the next year. It was experimental. We were a pilot program, and so only the elite of the elite was going to get in. And I had to be, oh God, the elite of the elite. I was so, the first elite had me. Second elite, I had to be in this class. And what it would do, it was 2 hours, the first 2 hours in the morning, so 2 credit hours, because they were combining science and industrial arts, which I learned to my disappointment was just a fancy name for shop. But the premise was that you wouldn't just learn about science, you would build these projects. Now, I knew even less about shop than I did about science, but I did not care. I had to be in there. And the thing was, you couldn't just qualify. You had to write a letter, an essay, my first essay, explaining why you needed to be in this class. So I wasn't going to let a little thing, like a complete lie, stand in my way. So I wrote this letter that was like, you know, science is life, and it's my life. And to be able to build the things as well as just learn about them was a dream come true. Don't crush my dreams. Let me in this class. So I got in, and which was great until the first day of the actual class, where they showed us one of these, I don't know if any of you have taken shop, but they show this, it's a safety film, but it's basically these people like who get a shirt caught in the table saw and lose an arm. It's horrifying. There was one guy, kid you not, who was talking to the camera directly. He was missing 3 limbs. Come on. Talking about if only I'd been more careful. You know. So by the time it actually came for us to approach one of these machines, and I had never used like a table saw before, I was like, you know that expression, like I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole? That's what I was like. I was like using 2 pieces of wood, 2 long pieces of wood to try to guide it through. And the teacher was like, you have to get closer. You'll never make an exact cut. So the first project that we had to do, it was a timekeeping machine. And the idea was you had to create something that would keep time for 3 minutes. Now, this was only a problem if you were afraid of the table saw, really. So I had to use my creative powers to think of something that really wasn't a very high-tech thing. So what I came up with, it's a brilliant idea, really. It was, I would just have this long rod, which you could buy already cut. This long rod, and it would just be upright, and that was the only problem, is you had to build a frame. So I got the teacher, Mr. Johnson from Industrial Arts, to feel sorry for me, and he helped me make the frame because I was so pathetic. So I made this frame, and then there was this big tall rod, and I put this little cork, piece of cork, and a spring out from the cork, and at the end of the spring was a frog. And what you would do is, it would be at the top, and you'd pull it down like this, and you'd let it go, and it'd start bouncing, bouncing, and slowly it works the cork down the rod. And the only problem is it turned out that there was such a variable in how hard you pulled it down to let it go that it was very wildly inaccurate as far as keeping 3 minutes of time. And I discovered this after, a full month of, we had a month to do this, you know, and all this work, and I painted lily pads on the bottom and all this stuff. So it's a little discouraging, but I was still thinking the night before, you know, because I had it at home for the painting, the night before we were supposed to bring it in to do the big presentation, I just thought I can do this. It's just, I practiced over and over, doing just the right amount of torque on the frog. It's a science term, torque. And so I was feeling like I had at least a 50-50. You had a 15% margin of error. I was feeling pretty good. And, you know, we go in the morning. It's my mom who's taking me to school because I can't ride the bus with this Herculean thing. And I look at our little Volkswagen Love Bug and I say, well, how are we going to get this in the car? And she goes, no problem, because my mom is clever. And she just rolls down the sun visor, plops it right in the top. Excellent. So we go to back out of the garage when all of a sudden there is a horrific sound and wood chips fly everywhere. My frog is catapulted out of the car and I start to sob. Over a month's worth gone, and this is my first project, and it's the elite of the elite, people. And it's gone, and the more I cry, the more my mom is laughing, and the more she laughs, like, she's hysterical. And the more she laughs, the more angry I get. And finally, I'm just like, what is so funny about my project being destroyed? And she tells me about this time, through her tears now pouring down her face, that when she was a girl and her mom was taking her to school because she was late and she missed the bus, she had all these petticoats she was trying to get in the door, so she hadn't actually closed the door when her mom backed out and took the mailbox out. And this reminds her just of that time because her mom was laughing and she was crying. So, apparently the cycle has been complete. But my mom managed to stop me from crying by promising me she would write me one of her famous notes, and this would get me out. This would somehow make up for everything, the fact that I had no project. I didn't know what she was going to write, but she assured me she was going to tell him about the week's events, whatever that meant. And so I go into school, projectless, armed with a note. I give it to my teacher, Dr. Letterman, who was a science teacher, and he starts laughing hysterically. Also, people in my life just are laughing at me. All I found out later from my mother was it was the same week that my brother's pet snake had gotten eaten by the rat that was supposed to be his food, had eaten him, and she had to take him to the veterinarian, and there was this whole big blowout around that. And then the next day, the exploding project. So I found out decades later from Dr. Letterman that he kept that note all these years, and that whenever he's having a really bad day, he just reads it. So, anyway, but after he stops laughing, I say, well, so you understand why I can't do a presentation? And he says, oh, no, you still have to do your presentation. I'm blown away by this. I don't know what he said, but I walked out a little bit dazed. I used the payphone to call my mom in a panic. Your note didn't work. I still have to do a presentation. She says these words, the emperor's new clothes. What? Says, your project are the emperor's new clothes. And I understand. And so I get up as an 8th grader in front of this class, and I position my project as if it's very heavy. And I position it just so that I can actually see the clock on the wall with the second hand. And I proceed to explain, everything that they can see clearly, but also, some added insight. And then, when I start the actual test, you have to demonstrate how it works. It's the longest 3 minutes of my life. I go like this. And I keep going. And I'm watching the time. And I mean, because I kept doing it so long, people kept thinking she's going to stop any second now. But I don't. I go through the full 3 minutes, and then I stop right at 3 minutes magically, like it had never kept time in its little life before. So I get an A+, both for the presentation and the project itself. Yes. The elite of the elite. Junior high requires no real aptitude. Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring up our very first one. Thank you. Thank you.